All right, and welcome. Few house rules, same as before. This is a Marketo Engage users group. So house rules are, please do not contact anyone that is a part of today's session without their consent, and do not share any of their use cases outside of this group. This is intended to be a safe space for all of us to share and to learn from each other. So we appreciate your cooperation in that. This is, as I mentioned, being recorded, though we will have some time available afterward for questions on unique use cases. This recording will be sent out in an email. You'll receive that after the fact. As soon as we get it uploaded and processed, you'll receive that. So if you do have members of your team that you wish to share this with, or wish to go back and review the information after the fact, that will be available for you shortly. If you registered for today's session through the mugs.marketo.com page, you are signed up for subscription notifications for new events. There are also other chapters, including some industry-specific chapters available on that page. So if you're in groups like manufacturing, healthcare, be sure to check those out as well. There are a few changes that have been made to the Marketo certifications. If you have not done those recently, you've probably heard us talk about these at previous mugs, but there are the new Marketo Engage and Associate certifications. The Marketo Certified Solutions Architect exam is now open to everyone, not just consultants, as it was prior. So if you've got several years of Marketo experience, including some experience in standing up a new industry or instance, this may be of interest to you to check out. We do have the champions office hours. We just had our August session. The September session will be posted soon on the mugs.marketo.com page. This is an open opportunity to have an hour's worth of Q&A with several of our Marketo champions for the year, to ask anything that you wish to ask, any burning questions, and get some expert advice. Now, as for today, we are going to be raffling, not raffling per se, but drawing for 3 $25 Amazon gift cards for attendees. So please do stick around. We will announce those at the end of today's session. We are absolutely thrilled today to welcome Amanda Thomas. Amanda is a consultant over at Atomos, and you are what, a six-time champion now? Five. And leader of the Houston Users Group. An absolutely incredible Marketo skill set and background that you have, and we are thrilled that you are here to share with us some best practices around nurture management. So thank you for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, what a great introduction too. I'll start sharing my screen. I have a little bit of a deck to walk through, and then I'll be actually live demoing an example of traffic director or nurture qualification management program, whatever you'd like to call it. So give me 1 second here. All right. I think we're good on seeing the screen. Yes. Okay.
We got
awesome. You. Great. All right. Well, yes, as Brooke already introduced me, hi, I'm Amanda. I am a senior marketing operations consultant at Atomos. I have over 9 years of experience in the Marketo tool, 5-time Marketo champion, and I co-lead the Houston Marketo user group. So if you're interested in joining one of our upcoming meetings, please feel free to look it up on the actual Marketo user group page. One thing about me within my realm of marketing operations, I love, love, love nurture. I could talk about it all day, every day. It's my favorite subject within the marketing ops realm. So this definitely falls into it. Our traffic director implementation guide and information on that. And if you want to connect with me outside of today, you can find me on social media at Hey Amanda T. That's Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the socials. So feel free to reach out to me if you do want to connect on anything that you see today and get more information. So today, this presentation is structured as outlined here. I'm going to go over what is Traffic Director and how it actually fits into Nurture, how Traffic Director actually works within your Marketo instance, how you can implement it, and then also how to modify it after it's up and running. So there are 4 components to Nurture, any nurture or structured nurture, I should say, within your Marketo instance. First is Traffic Director. So this is what we're going to cover today. It is a centralized program within your instance that's essentially managing static lists. And those static lists are then referenced by your actual nurture segmentation. So that is the second column that you see here. A nurture segmentation allows you to ensure that records that you're nurturing are only in one nurture at any given point of time, and you're not attacking them from all angles with all these different messages. The engagement program itself is obviously part of your nurture structure within Marketo, and then using default programs as your nurture cast programs to send the actual emails out is the 4th component of a good nurture setup within Marketo. So we are going to focus on Traffic Director, and that nurture segmentation today in this presentation and demo. So the components of the Traffic Director program are as outlined on the screen here. You'll have a folder for each nurture that you have or each nurture segmentation that you want to leverage within engagement programs. This folder is going to have a smart list for your audience criteria. It's going to have 3 campaigns. One to add people in that smart list to a static list, and that static list is then referenced by the segmentation. A smart campaign to remove people that are no longer on that smart list, but are still on that static list. You want to remove them from the static list, and that can be in like a pause scenario. So meaning they haven't exhausted the content, they're just not the best fit anymore for that nurture, but they could come back and be the best fit again and resume into that nurture at a later point of time. And the 3rd campaign would be to permanently remove people. So these are people that will never again qualify for your engagement program or have already exhausted all the content that you have to offer within that engagement program. So you want to make sure that they are permanently off of that static list referenced by the segmentation, and they're placed then on a permanently removed static list, which is then referenced again by your add or resume campaign. So that first campaign up here. So those are the components of each folder within your Traffic Director program. And I know it's a lot to conceptualize, so we're going to jump into a demo and actually show you how this looks in a Marketo instance. But how Traffic Director works is, again, you have that centralized program that's looking for smart list members and managing a static list that's then referenced by your segmentation. Then the segmentation itself is what is going to tell the engagement program to add records to it or to pause them from it. As soon as your segmentation actually changes, that's what's actually going to trigger people to get entered into your engagement program. So because this is leveraging a segmentation, you just definitely want to make sure that you're not using segmentations for use cases where you do want overlap. So you want someone in multiple nurtures at one point of time. The most common use cases, if your company has a series of products or services, and you want to ensure that they get into their adoption nurtures for those specific products, and you have those structured as different engagement programs, you want to make sure you're not leveraging the segmentation. Traffic Director isn't going to work for you very well in those scenarios. Traffic Director also is something that's not really needed if you only have one nurture or engagement program. So if you're just starting out and you're just trying to get records into one engagement program and that's it, this might be a little bit of over engineering, but it can be set up for future use cases. So like you have one now, but you know, it's one of your strategies in marketing to increase the number of nurtures that you have for the email channel. Then you can build it out, have it there, and turn on each individual segmentation or segment when the need arises after you have those engagement programs going. So just some caveats there to watch out for. Okay, so now we'll actually hop into the demo. Escape here. Okay, so traffic director, there are definitely a lot of names for this program. We are now calling it nurture qualification management, but it's essentially a default program that's going to exist inside of your instance that listens for your smart lists and then manages your static lists. You'll probably hear traffic cop a lot too. They're just different variations of what to call it. And you can pick whatever name vibes with you most. So I'm going to start in the actual folder structure of this program and how it's kind of organized. And hopefully this just helps you wrap your mind around how you would actually implement it in your own instance. So you'll have a folder for original routing. So this is when a person is created or anytime after you want to run a batch and get people resorted into a specific nurture, you would run these here. And then I call it sorting hat. I love it. It's great. Okay, so the two ways to enter again, the first is going to be like your life cycle or initial processing program. So if you have one centralized program, when a person is created, it houses all of the campaigns or actions that you want to be taken within Marketo. When a person is created, you can use that program to request this. And then again, you can run a batch for any reason afterwards to sort people through. But individually, these campaigns are going to run anyways. So this is just to enter into the program for the first time. And then once you're in the actual program, you're going to be sorted with these smart campaigns in the individual folders. So that brings us to the structure of that. You'll have an individual folder for each nurture that you have set up. This is very generic, but we have like 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then, of course, a development folder. This is really good to house your testing records, your testing campaigns, any reporting that you want to do, any ideas that you have where you want to rebuild something, you can throw it all into that development folder. So I'm going to show the actual breakdown of the individual folders here. So we have the first asset, again, is going to be your target audience smart list. So you just create a smart list and then you configure it with the criteria that you actually want for a record to enter into this nurture. So if it's a demand gen nurture for a specific product, then your smart list criteria is probably going to be more around the demographics that you have. Could also very much be behavioral based. If they visited a certain web page or something, you want to make sure that you have those filters in your smart list as well. Then the add and resume batch is going to run. You can have this as a batch or as a trigger. Most nurtures are on a cadence of like once a week or maybe a couple times a week. So I always encourage people to actually set this up as a batch campaign. There's no reason for you to have another trigger campaign inside of your instance that's over processing for something that's not going to run until like a week later. So you can just configure your batch to run. I would say maybe a few hours before your nurture actually casts from the engagement program streams. So how this is configured is it's listening for a member of a smart list, and then you're going to reference your target smart list up here. You're going to ensure that they're not in the permanently paused static list. So you'll reference that in your second filter, member of list, not in, and this is referencing that permanently paused static list. And then it's making sure that you're not already in the qualified static list. This is to ensure you're not over processing anyone. So you'll have a filter for that as well. And then the flow is very simple here. It's just going to add the record to that qualified static list that you have. Something to note here, a record could definitely be part of the smart list for, a few nurtures, right? So I could fit the target audience for a few nurtures that you have set up in your instance. And what the segmentation is then doing is going to prioritize what nurture I get first. So I would run through Traffic Director. And if I qualify for nurture 1 and nurture 2, I'm going to be on both of the qualified static lists. And that's kind of why we renamed it, instead of like active nurture or active and nurture, it's qualified for nurture. Just because I'm on that static list doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be in that nurture right away. So it's just something to kind of put in the back of your mind that you can have records on multiple qualified static lists, but they're only going to be in one segmentation, which allows you then to ensure that they're only in one nurture at any given point in time. So I'll pop over to the actual segmentation and you can see how that is set up and configured. Right. So I would definitely make sure that your naming convention, whatever you use to name your segments, actually relates to some of these static lists or the static lists I just had open. And this is to ensure if you have to troubleshoot anything, it's super easy to find and you're in the right spot. So all your segmentation is doing is just listening for a member of that static list. It references a static list, and because segmentations can't reference a smart list, and we don't want to build the criteria straight into the actual segmentation. So instead of the smart list filters being on that smart list, some people would assume that you could just build it in the smart list here and have all of your criteria. You could do that. However, when it comes down to troubleshooting and modifying in Traffic Director, it's going to be a lot harder to sort through all of these and a little disorganized compared to having it in one central program. The one central program also allows you to get around permissions a little bit. So you can modify in that centralized program who gets added to this list, who gets removed from this list, without actually having access to modify segmentations. So it's your way of kind of getting around that if you want the ability to get around it. But honestly, it's because of troubleshooting and just like clarity and modularity, if that's a word, and being able to modify things after turning them on. All of those reasonings is why we would actually reference a static list instead of directly building the criteria within the smart list for the segmentation. And I'm going to pop into the doc to finish the rest of the slides, but I can definitely go into the Traffic Director program a little bit deeper if you want to see more of it. But that's essentially the gist of it. You would just keep creating those, keep going into that Traffic Director program and just building out the rest of it, just as I showed you. Actually, I didn't cover the remove. So let me cover the removing my Zoom bar here. let's go back. Okay. So you have your add resume batch, then your pause batch is essentially going to see members that are no longer part of this smart list, but they're actually on that qualified list. It's going to remove them from the qualified list. So it's looking for members of smart list. They're not in the smart list anymore, but they are a member of the qualification list. And sorry, they okay. They're either paused permanently. So you can use one campaign. You can have one campaign for pause and pause permanently. But it's going to look for either one of those and then make sure that they actually get removed from that static list. And then that way they can no longer be in that segmentation. And the segmentation is just going to fit them into the next best suited nurture that they have. So again, in that first scenario, if I actually qualify for 1 and 2, and then somehow something changes on my record that I no longer qualify for number 1, the segmentation is going to read that I'm a member of this static list for number 2 and put me into the second nurture. And then your pause permanently is going to do the same thing essentially, but actually, your pause permanently is going to ensure that you're exhausted. And one caveat here that I like to throw out there to everyone, Marketo doesn't understand that you are exhausted until the next cast actually runs. So if you want someone to be sorted right away or sooner rather than later, I would use was sent last email instead of member of engagement program and exhausted. And then I would just pull in the last email that's available in that actual engagement program. And this ensures that they get removed from that static list and get resorted before the cast runs for the other nurture that they qualify for. So if you have all of your nurtures running on Tuesday mornings, the record would essentially skip a whole week of emails because they received the last email, like let's say this week. Then next week is when Marketo recognizes that the person is actually exhausted, and then they wouldn't sort through and qualify for the next cast to the week after. So essentially they would be skipping a week of emails. You want to ensure that doesn't happen, just use the received or was sent last email and you can pull that in. All right. Okay. So that's your pause permanently batch. I think I've covered them all now. This flow is just putting them on that pause permanently and making sure they get removed from that qualified list. Then after you have these all set up and your segmentations already configured, you want to pull in that segmentation change and just listen for that within your engagement programs. So you'll listen for it in the add, pause, and resume campaigns within your actual engagement program. So the add to nurture is just listening for, the segmentation changing, and that new segmentation or that new segment is the one that is associated to your nurture that you're building for. The pause is going to be the opposite of it. So it's going to look for your segmentation changing, and the new value is no longer the one associated to this engagement program, but they are a member of the engagement program and their cadence is normal. You're just going to flip that over to paused. And then resume would be if they are a member of the engagement program and their status is paused or their cadence is paused, and then their segmentation changes back essentially to the segment that is associated with your engagement program. Right, and good thing this is recorded so you can go back and click through and listen and use this as you actually build it out yourself. All right, so I'm going to pop back into the deck. So the last set of the presentation is around how do you actually implement something like this. I always start with a Gantt chart and actually document out all of the tasks that are associated with building this. So, you'll have how many nurtures. You definitely want to document all the nurtures that you have. Also get your stakeholders to prioritize those nurtures. Sometimes this can be a difficult conversation, but it's definitely necessary. And you can let them know that they can base this off of like quarterly goals. So if you do have multiple product lines or products that your company is selling or services, you definitely want to see like, okay, for this quarter, which one are we prioritizing? And you can definitely modify that moving forward to switch it up and, give one product the higher priority for a quarter and then the other, the higher priority for the next quarter. So I would list all that out. Campaigns and then just multiply that by the number of nurtures that you have. And then a pretty Gantt chart is where all of those tasks kind of roll up into larger tasks that you can then share out with stakeholders that aren't part of the build, but they need to know what's going on and why it's taking so long. This is documenting all your nurtures, making sure you have those conversations on which nurture should be prioritized. And then you'll build out the actual traffic director program, so that default program. Then you'll build out your segmentation. You'll run some testing. You can run people through to make sure they're getting added to the static list and then removed from the static list. You can update your engagement programs to call on the segment, and then turn on traffic director and the actual segmentation you'll approve. You'll need to approve the actual segmentation if it's the first time you're building it before you reference it in the engagement program. So the order of this can be different, like turned around to where you have that actual segmentation. Oh, sorry. No, this is the correct order, because once you approve that segmentation, that's when your segmentations are actually switching. And I would encourage running batches for your first time. So batch anyone that has a segmentation of nurture one into nurture one, because I believe when you first approve a segmentation, the change actually isn't logged in the activity log for the records. It just automatically sorts and there's no like log change because it's the first time that they're getting assigned a segment. And then I would retro process your database in to those different static lists afterwards. So you have everything turned on and then you just schedule batch campaigns to get people into those. All right. Can y'all hear me okay? I can see the.
Yeah, we've got you.
Okay. This trying to connect pop-up was on here. So I'm like, oh. So after you retro process, definitely take time to build out your documentation. I definitely suggest like 3 levels of documentation. One being a deck that you can share with stakeholders. So people that have no idea what you're talking about inside of Marketo, but conveying the purpose of why you spent time on this and why this is important to the structure of nurture. Then you'll want a written like Word doc. This is easily searchable. So any new users that come into Marketo that might need to modify this can actually go in and search like, nurture one segmentation, find it in the Word doc, see how you set it up, get the links to the actual campaigns and segmentations that you're referencing. And it's very, very easy to get what you need pretty quickly. And then the third would be kind of like your PM worksheet, so to speak, that kind of lists everything in a very nerdy way with the spreadsheet, and it has all of your nurtures documented, what priorities you put for those nurtures and when, and then who the stakeholders are for those nurtures. That's all really good information to have and keep updated. So when the conversation comes up again on reprioritization or adding engagement programs, you can reference that sheet as well. So how do you actually modify this after you have it live? I did not go into all of the details here, but if you want more details, just ping me and I'm happy to talk through them. But these are the reasons why you would modify this moving forward after it's turned on. The first reason being you're creating an actual new engagement program. You have a new reason to nurture people and you're setting up a new program itself. You'll need to go into the traffic director program and start building for that. If you're removing an engagement program, you want to make sure people aren't sorting into that segmentation that's no longer used by an engagement program. You don't want people kept to the side. You want them to enter into another nurture. And then anytime you're modifying the actual target audience. So you want to say product one, I only want C-levels to like enter in now, I've changed my mind, then you'll actually go in to modify. And then how to modify this, again, is super high level, but I can definitely give more details if needed. But creating a new engagement program, you'll create a new folder, you'll clone those campaigns and lists, and then configure. If you're removing, you want to remove the segment from the segmentation. You want to archive those folders, make sure those campaigns are turned off, and then reprocess any members of that smart list, your target audience. You want to make sure you reprocess them through so they have the opportunity to enter into another nurture. And then same thing with modifying your target audience. You'll definitely reprocess those members as well. So you go in, update your smart list, and then you'll want to run a batch on members of that smart list to make sure they can get sorted into the best fit. So if you're modifying the target audience for your highest priority nurture, and someone could be in a lower priority nurture, this would essentially move them from that lower priority into the top priority nurture. All right, I know it's a lot of info, and usually when I go over traffic director with people, they have lots of use cases. So I wanted to make sure we had enough time for Q&A. So I'll stop there and we can open up questions.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording so that if anyone wants to get specific around use cases, et cetera, that they are not having that on the recording. Before we move over to that, just want to say on the recording, thank you, Amanda, you rock as always.